The township was a busy place, a crossing over a river that had become a trading post, built up by humans with their structures of stone and wood, packed too close together as always. Noisy, crowded, bombastic, and yet secretive and conniving people lived there, proudly proclaiming their town's virtues and history, such as it was, and yet stabbing each other in the dark alleyways over the coins in their purses. Such was their way. But coin there was, and plenty of it for those who worked hard, or risked all for it. Passing through the town's open market square, past the stinking cages outside the magistrate's office, the victims of the town's laws swinging slightly in the merciful breeze. You find the place you're looking for and climb the winding steps of a short stone tower. The door, when you reach the top landing, is already open, and just inside, a richly clothed dwarven wizard looks you over, then turns with a gesture for you to follow. Seated behind his desk, introductions made, the wizard Drogath Stonefire gets to the point of your visit swiftly. Dwarves seldom spend time in idle chatter and pleasantries.
Not far from here is a quarry. The humans have been taking rock from there as the local supply of river stone is short. The gold mining along the river has largely panned out now, but another bridge was needed, and so they turned to the stone of the sea cliffs, despite the warnings. In fact, my attention came to this out of concern to preserve the ancient carvings of runes on the cliff walls the humans reported were there, made by my own ancestors before the humans tore them down and hauled them here. They were worried they might bring unwelcome magic in with them and lay it into the bridge itself. Foolish, but I had an interest in the history anyway, and they paid me.
He turns his head slightly, and his gaze lingers on a large purse of golden coins, minted in this town from the local river deposits, laying on the cluttered desks beside many very old documents.
A long time ago, this place was not the sea cliffs. It was a hill overlooking the shore with a structure. A warlock fortress inhabited by Magroggan. Not of my clan. He was a man of limitless ambition in a time of warfare with the old races who dwelled in these lands. This is not war like you will find in these times, and Magroggan held the Stone of Shadow, cast out of the heavens by the gods in a fiery plume, cursed, such that all who would look upon it would be blinded. Magroggan harnessed the power of the stone and its terrible curse, for he had needed in that time of terrible warfare to create the most ancient runes, in rituals so profane that if they were performed within sight of the gods, he would have been invoking their wrath instantly. His fortress, most foul, eventually fell into ruin, and barely a trace of it was left. The sea now risen would one day take care of the rest, eaten away at that stone of that hillside, where my ancestral clan carved those warnings into the rock, lest any venture into the chambers once sealed off below, now open due to time and the workings of ice and waves on the stone. The humans moved into this area, and with them came goblins on the outskirts, as always, like rats in the bilge. They infested the cliffside caves, and would even have trespassed below that hillside. But there are tales of a blight that came to them. Some say it was the workings of the evil trickster god Nilboger, or some such. I care not for the mad ravings of their religions, but this tale started with them. Something began to take their children from them in the dark of night. They may have tracked it back to that cave, for in their tongue they called it Vos Hekalok, a place of death. Later their folklore called it the hungry cave that eats children. Well, more or less. The precise translation is much more disgusting, of course. Had I known this before, I would have warned my clan of the danger. But there was no need. We've not delved there ever since we found veins of tin and some silver, but they were never substantial. The goblins mostly moved into old mine shafts. Later, humans were spurred into going to war with the goblins there, blaming them for missing children, no doubt. You might have noticed there are no homesteads very close to those cliffs, as the settlers who dwelled there lacked any descendants to pass their steadings down to. So the coastal forest took back what had been cut, milled, and constructed, as goes with things made of wood. You may also notice no elves dwell among those trees. They never have. Those woods have always been a place of darkness. First a bastion of the old ones, and now, who knows what. It was against my advice to let a daughter of my clan go and supervise the humans and others who went back to their place to quarry those damned rocks, but now, well, we come to why you are here, and the purpose of that large bag of coins there. I would have you go to meet her there. There is a building made for the supervision of the quarry and the storage and repair of tools, a place where workers would take rest and eat food, but mostly camped nearby, close to the woods and easy walk to gather firewood, herbs and berries. Some game at the forest edge for the campfire come evening, or when my people took over the workings late in the night. So it is my people who first saw something come out of the opening below the cliff and make its way up to the building. They heard the screams of my daughter's children in their beds. They ran to the steps and ladders, tools in hand, but they were too late. One child was taken. The other has not spoken a word since that night and sleeps only in the light of fireplace or lit candles, and the only sound he makes now is the screaming he makes, if ever touched by shadows. I begged my daughter not to go down into those caves, but she cannot rest. You understand a mother's love. She cannot sleep knowing her daughter's bones are still down there in the darkness. She has waited only a short time, and she will wait no longer. So, make haste to the quarry. I will not hand you this gold to be lost down there and lure some other damned fool inside on promise of easy riches, no. Should you not return, this gold will go to your friends, families, loved ones, or mentors. You not only have my word, but I have carved a rune on my body that binds me to this pact. Should I fail to make swift payment, I am bound to follow you down there and come back out with your bones, or not come out again at all.
The weight of gold in the leather bag on his desk is substantial, and the purity of the metal of those coins are made from it very high indeed. The metal almost glows in the light of thick candles and a lit brazier near them. The light reflects from the sharp eyes of the wizard as he stares into your own gaze, waiting for your reply. The standard of entering provisions may be purchased in the township. The journey to the coast is over well-worn roads of white sandstone with traces of gravel. The forest edge is never far from sight, and the road bends and twists like a river delta through the increasingly steep hillsides. Occasional ruins of old farmsteads can be seen here and there, often no more than a lonesome stone chimney rising out of a mound of rotting timber, now covered with berry thorns and weeds. The fruit trees planted by the settlers still stand, and many hold ripe stone fruits within easy reach. Some tree nuts can be found, though they have mostly been gnawed on by rodents. It is late in the day when you at last reach the final rise leading to the sea cliffs. It's easy to see why a tower was built here long ago, for it could command a view across the entire bay and the coastline for many miles around. The road bends around the hill base and descends sharply down into the quarry. The building also sits on a natural overlook, an outcrop platform of solid rock. Some light flickers in the windows, but down below, the quarry is absolutely silent. Not so much as a bird is down there singing to the setting sun. No tools ring against stone, no working dwarves' deep voices raised together in song. As you make way down through the quarry floor, you see a figure burst out of the building above and almost tumble down the steps and leap down ladders in their haste to reach the ground. Only as they are at the bottom are you close enough to see them well enough and recognize that this must be the quarry supervisor, the daughter of the wizard in town. Kelda Stonefire is not dressed for fighting. She wears supple leathers and, aside from sturdy boots, fingerless gloves and a hastily worn gorget and iron cap, she only has her tool harness, an enchanted lantern of some kind. Her green eyes are wild as you move across her path.
My boy, they took my boy, for the love of the gods, please help me.
Without waiting for an answer, she runs to the worked stone and thick wooden door that seals off the entrance to the cave under the cliffs, but almost immediately she recoils from the doorway, dropping her lantern that smashes and goes out. She clutches at her head and staggers back. Then, the pain seeming to vanish, she shakes her head, auburn hair flying around, then glances back to see if you will follow, and begins to march right into the caves with no more than a tool belt to defend herself. The wizard had warned you, bold adventurers, that none who ventured into these cursed chambers had ever returned, at least not alive, or certainly not of sound mind or body. But here you are within these rough-worked dungeon rooms, well past the numerous rotting timber warning signs and the sturdy, iron-bound oaken doors. You now enter some outer chamber of these underground vaults, carved out long, long ago. The gloom in this place is exceptional, but those who can see in the darkness noticed almost immediately that something is not right. In fact, something is very, very bright. A short way into the passage, the first of numerous crystals can be seen, not glowing to the eyes of those who do not have this special sight, but to those with dark vision, they shed an intense light so bright it is painful to even keep one's eyelids open, causing tears to stream from those who would try to withstand it and hopelessly try to adjust to it. Those without dark vision see only a somber glimmer of dark purple light, radiating very close to the surface of the strange crystals, but causing the air around it to seem to smudge with deep purple glow, as if the red haze of hot metal, but with no heat, rather a lingering chill, fills the air. The air is damp, of course, but more than rotting seaweed and dead fish smells linger here. No, something very foul, like bags of onions that have turned into noxious sludge in a dark cellar, or those piles of garbage you find outside of a butcher's shop, rifled through by stray dogs, scattering cuttings of fat, offal and dog shit all over the muddy street, and clogging overrun gutters with a noxious swill of sewer water, dead rats, and gods knew what else with it. This smelled like that. Unclean, diseased. The etchings that can be made out now in the dim glow, or the searing beams of light only withstood in flashes, are carvings of unusual runes. To dwarven eyes, the swept lines, the uneven spacing, the alien loops of these runes are somehow deeply offensive, with meanings indecipherable but clearly profane. The elves wrote runes like this once. Humans copied them for their effect, even if they don't understand their meaning. Some explode with energy if merely looked at by a mortal being. Some repel creatures of good heart. Some call on names that no mortal may utter without their tongue rotting out of their mouth. These runes are dangerous in the extreme. They should not be here. But then, an expert in the arcane may surmise that the very power that prevents any magic of divine sight from reaching into these chambers may prevent the gods seeing in here as well, and thus the runes remain dormant somehow. Experts in underground biology will see rare fungus and insects that normally would never live this close to the surface world. There are bile-coloured splotches of devil's wort with its lurid red nobules that look like red eyeballs gouged from a socket. There are foot-long centipedes with mildly toxic bites and the long waving antennae of cave crickets, their pale bodies vanishing suddenly as they leap away into the gloom. The steady dripping of water is the only sound beyond the footsteps and the breathing of the intruders. The uneven granite flagstones are slick with cave slime and thousands of dead insect bodies, now decaying mostly to a sloppy muck. Soon after entering, the passage ends with expertly carved stone steps leading further down into the cliffs. Encounter Area 1, the Tomb. As the players enter the tomb of chamber of Magroggan the Profaner, they can feel the weight of the darkness settling upon them like a heavy cloak. The air is thick and musty, and the sound of their footsteps echo through the chamber. The walls are adorned with eldritch runes that pulse and writhe in the dim light of the few yellow crystals set throughout the room. Metal ornaments, candle holders, shields, weapons, and other items are strewn about the chamber, their ancient surfaces badly corroded. The yellow crystals cast a warm, gentle glow that allows the players to see their surroundings, but they feel a sense of unease as they realize that any other source of light would trigger a strange backlash, creating a shrieking, ringing sound in their ears and causing psychic damage to those within 10 feet of the sources of light. As they investigate the room, they notice a pitch-black passage leading out of the chamber. A dark mist seems to waft out of the passage, shrouding the area in an impenetrable veil. As soon as the players touch any object within the room, the spectral apparition of the long-dead warlock materializes from within the dark mist. The apparition warns them in ancient dwarven language to leave this cursed place while they still can, its voice echoing ominously through the chamber. At some point in its history, a large boulder has dislodged itself from the ceiling, smashed down and shattered the top left corner of the dark granite sarcophagus of the warlock. His remains are now ravaged by decay, but still his bones and what remains of his flesh, mostly infested with fungus and wrapped tightly in oil and resin-soaked strips of cloth, still worn on his skull, a perfectly unblemished set of ornate goggles sit. Some magic lingers in them, for they appear perfectly functional, as if they were made yesterday. The lenses are a deep purple colour. The rest seems to be made of silver and gold, with a purple strap of some kind of thick fabric. So much as touching the goggles causes magical energy to light up in the sarcophagus, and the mummified remains of Magroggan stir, and the sound of stone scraping against stone fills the room as the heavy lid of the sarcophagus slides open. The players can feel their hearts pounding in their chests as the reanimated mummy rises from its slumber, its decayed form shuffling towards them with a terrible hunger in its empty eye sockets. Not touching any objects or the goggles on the corpse will avoid any dangers in this chamber. However, the benefit of the dim illumination from the yellow crystals, or the protected full dark vision of whoever wears the purple lensed goggles, will not be gained. The tomb of Chamber of Magroggan, the Profaner, is a place of darkness and danger, where the slightest mistake could trigger the curse and unleash the wrath of the reanimated mummy upon them. The players must prepare to face the horrors that lie within, and they must be prepared to fight for their lives if they hope to emerge alive with the magical goggles in their possession. Notes: the yellow crystals allow normal sight in the chamber, while the dark purple crystals create blindingly bright infravision light. The purple crystals are not what is triggering the psychic backlash when artificial light sources are used in the room. A clever player may figure out that they can simply cover the purple crystals to block the super bright dark light. An extremely clever player may take some of the crystal and fashion a bullseye lantern which extends dark vision out to 120 feet that can't be seen by anyone without dark vision. However, any exposure to natural sunlight will ruin the crystal permanently, and there is no clue that this will occur without trial and error. Touching any object within the room will trigger the apparition. It is there to warn the players, but will defend itself with deadly intent if attacked. Touching the magical goggles will trigger the mummy of Magroggan to rise and attack the players, any living being in the chamber, until it is destroyed. The boulder falling from the roof was from an earthquake long ago that destroyed the warlock citadel and split the rock of the granite outcrop and caused the sea to rise. The dungeon is unstable, but won't collapse from the spells that don't create earth tremors. As a system agnostic adventure, you can decide how to handle the game mechanics. I don't care. Encounter Area 2, the Twisted Lair. Moving down the passage, the walls have less ornate but disturbing runes carved into them. There are no light sources. It is pitch black. The moisture in the air is noticeably more intense, and the smell of decayed flesh is very strong, the cause of which soon reveals itself as the player characters arrive at a chamber piled with gnawed bones and waste. Clearly, this is the feeding chamber and lair of some formidable predator. They have a moment to notice that the bones are twisted, the skulls mutated somehow. That along with many, many small skulls of small children, there are the skulls of beasts of the forest as well as monsters such as trolls and ogres who are said to dwell in the untamed forests of the coast. Unless the player characters are moving through here with utmost stealth and not a word uttered aloud, they will alert the beast which is already beginning to feed on Conan, the kidnapped son of Kelda Stonefire. His faint crying can be heard on the other side of the large pile of bones and horrible muck. The beast is not feeding on the child's flesh yet. It is feeding on his fear, because it is a monster originally from the land of Fae, a boggle or bogeyman, now twisted and mutated by some other dimensional energy or eldritch infection, a twisted and tormented version of its kind, empowered with the ability to cloak itself in shadows. It is not expecting anything to follow it into this lair, and is actually weaker here in the darkness than it is outside in the moonlight. There is no negotiations with this creature. It has been alive and trapped in this plane for centuries, locked in a tormented existence and forced to feed on the flesh of other creatures to survive. This creature is utterly insane and driven only by hunger for fear and fresh meat. It will attack as soon as it detects a disturbance in the room. Notes: Combat with this creature is most likely unavoidable, but if the players actually manage to subdue or kill the boggle without making a lot of noise, they may avoid alerting the real boss monster of this dungeon, which is some distance away, down a long passage and under some water. It has very sensitive hearing and detects vibrations in the water flooding the passage 2 feet deep. Connor, the dwarven child, will not make any sounds once the boggle stops tormenting him. If the boggle starts to actually eat him, he will start screaming, of course. Any player characters who wish to search the pile of bones and decayed offal in the room will have a good chance of catching a disease. The reward for their effort is a few coins, some tarnished jewellery, and nightmares for years to come. Encounter Area 3, the Goobilith Grotto. The Goobilith lurks in the water-filled room. The only entrance to this area is through a set of stone columns that are fully submerged under the water. The approach to these columns is the long passage that is flooded with 2 feet of water. The entire area is cloaked in darkness, with the only illumination coming from the dimly gleaming dark purple, dark light crystals that emit a constant blinding glare only detectable with dark vision. The source of the violent psychic backlash to any other source of light, including magic, flame, or divine light, is the Goobilith. It will seek out and attack any creature that approaches its lair down the passage, and will wait in ambush outside the flooded room in the entrance to the chamber containing the Stone of Shadow, where it can attack creatures on any side of it using the 10-foot reach of its flesh-dissolving paralytic tentacles. The Goobilith appears to be some kind of a mutant fish with long tentacles and a mouth like a lamprey on the underside of its body. It has multiple eyes but seems adapted to only see in the illumination of the dark light crystals. It is encased inside a rubbery sphere of sticky ooze that has some kind of a liquid jelly core in which the mutant fish floats, well protected. So to damage the fish, you must first cut through its protective ooze vehicle, so to speak. The ooze is a symbiotic creature, not part of the fish. The fish feeds it by using its tentacles to liquefy the flesh of any creature it touches. In the game, this is represented by necrotic damage. The fish has the ability to lash out with 2 tentacles each round of combat. It will attempt to grapple a foe with only 1 tentacle at a time, and only if the target is suffering the effects of the paralytic poison covering its slimy tentacles. The ooze may slam into a target only if it rolls forward in a 10-foot dash first. Otherwise, it can roll on top of the prone target and inflict crushing damage each round, unless it is moved off them or they manage to crawl out with a feat of impressive strength, as the ooze and fish are quite heavy. The fish is telepathic and can inflict physical pain in the form of psychic screams, but only once or twice per day. Those who sustain liquefaction damage from the tentacles or fail to resist becoming paralyzed by its poison are at risk of contracting a mutagenic disease that may only be cured by divine or alchemical means. It is a contagion of otherworldly energies, immune to the medications of the natural world. The Goobilith, also known to some as the Mind Guppy, is the infant form of a far more powerful creature of the twisted dimensions of the elder gods. It cannot tolerate the touch of natural sunlight and detests bright light of any kind other than the weird radiation of the dark light crystals. It is also vulnerable to the touch of gold, so weapons or objects made of or coated in gold will inflict additional damage to it. When the slime-filled ooze sphere is cut open, the Goobilith will burst out in a spray of slime that coats a 20-foot area in slippery scum, making movement difficult. The slime is also mildly toxic and can cause paralysis as it gets inside any open wounds. The Goobilith can use its tentacles to snare a creature and drag it under the water, where the combination of its paralytic poison and the lack of air can be quite deadly. Notes: the Goobilith was found as a small egg that was in the same crater the Stone of Shadow was recovered from. Its mere presence in this dungeon has caused all the mutations in any lifeforms who lingered too long in the place. The warlock Magroggan protected himself from the mutations by using eldritch runes he carved into his own body, and contained the foul dimensional corruption inside his dungeon with those same runes etched deeply into the stone walls and portable slates he kept with him at all times. Encounter Area 4, the Stone of Shadow. Inside this chamber are the dark secrets of Magroggan's dungeon, the foul experiments he performed, along with books of information about alien dimensions and twisted, profane forms of life he discovered. There are stacks of mutated skulls, weird organs and pickle jars, an assortment of oddly coloured but otherwise inert crystals, and several vials of what appears to be potentially dangerous poisons of various sorts, but no notes as to how they are used or how to do so safely. Pride of place, though, is a stone plinth on which rests the Stone of Shadow. It gleams with the same dull purple glow of the dark light crystals, but is clearly a carefully worked and polished gem the size of a human fist. Taking the stone from the room triggers no traps. The room is interesting, and many of its objects will be of great interest to unethical or foolish mages, and keenly sought after by very evil hags, but outside of specialist collectors of the weird, they will have little value. There is a small bag of silver nuggets the warlock collected in his excavations of the granite hill. Notes. The Stone of Shadow confers instant and complete invisibility to any living being that holds it in their hand and concentrates on its power. This invisibility can only be disrupted by a break in concentration or in the presence of an anti-magic effect. At all times, the Stone of Shadow is not detectable by magic of divine means. It radiates an impressive field of anti-scrying power that extends for a couple of thousand feet all around it. This effect never switches off. Any living being holding the stone and activating its power will also cause their shadow to detach from their body and become an independent, very evil entity that absolutely hates them and will immediately go about sneaking away and attempting some act of great evil and then planting evidence which points to its creator being the culprit. It will steal objects, destroy precious things, and even murder people and try to frame its host, and even set traps intending to maim and even kill its host, as it is convinced that this is its only path to total freedom from them once and for all. This effect is far from obvious, considering the use of the stone also causes the holder of it to become invisible at the same time. As soon as the Stone of Shadow is moved over 1,000 feet away from the tomb of Magroggan, the Profaner, the anti-scrying effect will be removed. All of the runes will be exposed. The god's wrath will descend on the place instantly and drastically, and it will cause a total and utter collapse of the structure, ruining it forever. Have fun with that. If you enjoyed this sort of video adventure format, let me know in the comments and support the video with a like and a share on your socials. You can get the full script for this adventure on my Patreon. Minimum of $1 patronage once a month is all it takes to get access to all of my content there. My name is AJ Pickett. Thanks for listening, and as always, I'll be back with more for you very soon.